snowpocalypse, snowmageddon, no way you're going to be able to drive an EV and weather this cold, or maybe there is. It's tough to say. We've got some big problems in the Midwest, and we're going to figure them out. I'm Brian. Welcome to my Tesla Weekend. Joining me as he does around this time each week is my good buddy Herbert. So good to see you, my friend. We didn't connect over the holidays. We'll have to get that sorted out.
Well, there was no way for me to say hi to you.
It's not possible. That's not going to work. I don't think that's how we want to do that. So I don't know if you've heard cold snap. Very cold. It's very cold here. It's very cold where you are. It is very cold throughout the Midwest and into Canada. I am not Brick Tamlin, the weatherman, the very famous weatherman, so I will save that for others. But there are some problems. My brother, who I'm going to be meeting with hopefully in the next 10 days to give him a fun demo, his first drive in an EV. He will take the reins and see what an electric car can do. Went ahead and texted me last night, cars abandoned all over in Chicago. Don't know if you heard. Oh, God, here we go. He's not wrong. There's some context missing, but there is not enough context missing. You know that the story started, it's got to be awful. And you look at it, you're like, this has got to be nonsense. So you click on it and you read it and you're like, nope, that's real. That's legit. That is happening. I don't know if you had a chance to check it out. Kyle from Out of Spec did a podcast yesterday. It was him and three others, one of whom was in Chicago. And they were discussing what's really going on the ground. And they had some great perspectives. First of all, you've been driving, I assume, this week. Have you had any issues or complications?
I live in Seattle, Vancouver. I don't think it gets to that freezing temperature that Chicago was able to get to. Tesla cars have been around since 2012, and this is not a thing. There's 5.5 million Teslas out there, and there's many different environments it's in. It's considered to be one of the best cars in countries like Norway and Sweden, like very, very cold areas. This happens. It can happen. I think you just said maybe there's 12 cars here. Sure. And then you want to ask yourself, right, is this something that every car, not just an electric vehicle, not just a Tesla, will this something affect those cars as well? When the temperature gets down to that cold, you can't open doors. I've had cars that are regular gas cars I've experienced everything you can imagine. The whole, you can have like 5 feet of snow on top of the car, and then you're like scraping it all off. Here with a Tesla, you can actually warm the car using your app and then get it cleared up before you even walk in there. There's all these things that are happening. So yeah, tell me more about what's happening.
Well, so you're right. What you said is the bad weather can affect any car. I had a video this morning, or maybe yesterday morning now, with Brian Reby from Brian Reby Drives Electric. He's in Minnesota. He is in the heart of the cold snap. And he said gas cars suffer similar fates, where the battery won't crank or the oil is too thick and you have to wait for it to warm up. The difference is all things struggle in these kinds of temperatures. When you get down well into the negatives, the teens, the 20s and beyond, wind chills getting you to negative 45, everything will struggle. Life itself struggles at those temperatures. The difference is we've got 100 years of experience knowing how to keep your gas car winter ready. And a lot of people have no experience at all keeping their electric car winter ready. Because until it gets to those extreme temperatures, you don't have to even think about it. So it creates an understanding gap that is unfair to the consumer, unfair to the buyer, unfair to the people actually having the experience. And one of the conclusions on that podcast with Out of Spec was, well, they need to have better consumer education. And it's like, well, I guess they do. But that would be, if we're planning for every possible eventuality, we're over planning. And then how do you get that message to them? I mean, there are people who don't know what the features on their car even are. There are people who've owned them for years and just found out about fart mode. If you're not staying warm with that, what are you doing? So what happened in Chicago was a perfect storm, I guess. It was when the cars are cold, they
This was at a supercharger, right?
this was
A
at real
supercharger.
superchargers, but it was
Mhm.
also at EVgo and Electrify America. All of the networks were struggling because the weather is the same at all of them. So the first problem is if your battery is too cold, it has to warm up before it can take any charge at all. So you head to the supercharger, you roll in with, maybe you didn't precondition, maybe you rolled in with such a low state of charge that you couldn't precondition, so you plug it in. And for the first, I mean, in those kinds of weathers, Kyle and the crew were saying, it could take 20, 30, 40, 60 minutes for the battery to get warm enough to take a charge. And if that's the case, you've just definitely created a line because that 1 hour, 3 cars should have been in and out in that time. There's now a line. And those guys are going to sit there running their battery, trying to stay warm, waiting. So that's step one of the disaster. Then once you actually plug in, when it's actually charging, you're not going to get the full charge. And if you've got a Bolt that can only take 50 kilowatts or a Gen 1 Mach-E that can only take 150 kilowatts, it's going to charge slower. It's going to compound the backup. What they were saying was, if you notice, the backups were only in a very limited geographical area. And their advice was, if you'd have just driven 10 minutes out of town to where there was no line, the whole thing would have been avoided. And it's a lack of planning because the cars are new. The philosophy of electric driving is new. And because of some of these limitations, there is a disconnect where people they still think they can use the same preparations that worked on an internal combustion car and have it work on an electric car. And 99% of the time that might be true, but when you get to this extreme kind of cold, it isn't. So the fact that it's only happening in one narrow geographical area
Exactly.
should tell you a lot of it. Have you seen anybody drive their cars, their Teslas, in extreme cold on YouTube?
I've not, but I understand that many of the videos that Tesla's been showcasing, focusing on, has always been in these Norways and other places that you have tremendous uptake. Right, the Tesla cars are very, very popular there. Why would they choose a Tesla if in very cold environments, if Tesla's not capable? This has been going on for years. That this is 70% of all new cars sold in Norway is Tesla, or not Teslas, but electric vehicles, and Tesla is like the number one. So it's
So,
just,
yes.
yeah,
Well, one reason to play devil's advocate is that they all suck, but Tesla sucks the least. Not the case. If you look at Tesla Bjorn, he is always driving in Arctic conditions.
yeah,
Maybe a year or two ago, Lars from Best in Tesla decided, I'm sick of the nonsense. My brother-in-law and I are going to take my Model 3 to the Arctic Circle in the dead of winter, in the coldest possible situations, to show you that it works. It actually works. The difference is they have that kind of weather on the regular and they can plan for it. If you know what to expect. I went to Mexico once, to Puerto Vallarta, during the rainy season. And my friend said, that must have been miserable. I said, no, I just planned for it. I just expected there to be a torrential downpour every day. And there was, and it felt like I was standing in a shower. And now I'm clammy for a couple hours while it dries off. It's all about managing expectations. And I would say that Tesla and the other EV manufacturers absolutely failed to manage expectations in regards to extreme, unusual cold. If you look at even last December, there were, I believe, no states that got into negative temperatures for more than a day or two. And
hmm
that's more normal. The teens is very cold. Teens would be, what would that be? About -10. Teens is very cold. Your car will do reasonably well. I've had periods where I plugged my car in at home, and because it was so cold, it took a little bit longer to charge than I expected.
yeah. It's not a big deal. I mean, here in Canada, Vancouver, and here in Seattle, the temperatures were below zero for the weekend. not an issue. By the way, I don't know if you saw this, but in Chicago, there's photos of a gas station. Because the temperature fell so low, the gas station was frozen. It itself was frozen. So, it's not like this can't, like you said, it can't affect everything when the temperatures fall this much. But it is still yet another thing, right? It's like this idea that people have, and then they spread it. I was at a bank last week, and the teller was telling me that, oh yeah, I saw this thing on Instagram, and this Tesla's the battery died, and they have to replace the battery, and they couldn't open up the door. I said, yeah, that's not a thing. Tesla's been around since 2012. You don't, if this was a thing with 5 million cars out there, this would have been you'd hear a lot more of it. But the reason you're hearing it, all these, mainstream media and others, sensationalizing stories. And if it did happen, it's one story out of 5.5 million. It's not a thing. But, she quickly said, oh, yeah, I get you. But it's just, that's what they're seeing because they don't know. And that's why we're here.
Yeah, that's what's soaked into their heads. Another compounding factor that was brought up was Hertz buys a lot of the standard range, which uses LFP batteries, which doesn't charge as well in the cold, doesn't do as well in extreme cold. Those often end up as weekly Hertz rentals for Uber drivers. I can tell you, I've met with quite a few of those Uber drivers. They don't understand what the car is, and there doesn't appear to be any education that is pushed out to them from Hertz or Tesla to help them understand what the car is and how it works. I was at a supercharger in Michigan. The Michigan Owners Club out there has this Adopt a Supercharger program where they go out and just pick up trash and answer any questions you might have. And it's wonderful because they get to meet all kinds of people and help them improve their Tesla experience. And we talked with a Uber driver who said, yeah, it's great. I plug it in, it gets right up to 80%, and then it slows down so much, and I'm sitting here for ages. And they said, why are you charging over 80? What are you doing? Isn't your time worth? I mean, you can just come in for 10 minutes at a pop while you're waiting for a fare and then take off and get more than they just don't know. So if in Chicago, any number of these were those standard range Hertz Uber rentals, it's going to slow everything to a crawl. And a lot of those drivers do not have charging at home.
They don't do it at home. Yep.
They don't do it at home. So as we see more buyers who don't have home charging, the ability to understand how these cars work is more important. And the cars will, I'm sure, over time get better at handling outlier conditions. That's was true of all cars early on, and it's increasingly true of electric cars. They're all getting better all the time, with the possible exception of GM. But that's
yeah. It's a war between electric vehicles and gas cars, and there's so many benefits of an electric vehicle. So if you count up all the positives versus the negatives, and yet, of course, the legacy ICE manufacturers who've slowed down their EV goals, the big oil, the mainstream media, they're all trying to pick anything that's negative. They're going to go and exaggerate it. And there might be a negative or two, but at the end of the day, there's nothing going to stop this electric vehicle revolution. There's just way too many benefits. And one of them, which is the big one, is price. Price is now at price parity, and soon it's going to continue to fall. And so all of this will be just memories of the past. Now, we're going to have many, many more superchargers everywhere. You've already seen that almost every car company in the US has partnered with Tesla. They're now themselves rolling out superchargers. You've got hotels, Best Western and Hyatt announced 20,000 each that they're going to roll out superchargers. You're going to hear more and more of those partnerships. Big Oil has gotten to the game, and they're rolling out superchargers and at least electric vehicle chargers everywhere. So, yeah, maybe just wait a couple years and none of this matters anymore.
Yes. And I'm looking forward to this visit with my brother, the big motorhead, because I can't imagine how he'll feel, because I know he despises electric cars. I know he does, but it's a different experience, and nothing can tell you that quite like getting behind the wheel. He knows from reading that they're quick and that, but maybe that's a one-trick pony. He doesn't know. He can't know what he doesn't know.
Quick story about my sister. She is a big Mercedes and BMW fan, she and her husband. and she obviously, countering me and my two brothers. We're all into Tesla. And then she said to me just this last week, I'm going to buy the Cybertruck. I'm like, what? Where did this come from? Anyways,
I,
I think people have the message now that electric vehicles is the future. It really is kind of starting to seep in. And if not, well, certainly this year, next year, it's a done deal. So
it's a done deal. And yeah, I do not know if I'm going to recommend that he buy an electric car, because I just feel like for the next 3 years, anytime he has any kind of anxiety or anything, I'll be his personal tech support. And I'm just not ready to do that. But
okay.
we'll see. We'll see how it goes. Guys, in the comments, what did we forget to discuss on this, the snowiest of snowpocalypse? It's got to be something. We surely forgot something. I would say that we are both not apologizing, trying to make light of Tesla's situation and say that the drivers are all wrong. No, the drivers are right. They have every reason to be upset. I get upset when I'm stuck anywhere. This is an area for improvement, not just for Tesla, but for all makers, for the chemistry, for the scientists, for all of it. And it will improve. But a little bit of planning goes a long way when it comes to any kind of travel. And, I mean, airlines get snowed in too. So, gotta accept some of that, I suppose, even when we don't like it. So head on over to Herbert's channel, Brighter. He is fantastic and does great work and gets the hugest names. He's got some coming up that are very exciting and I'm pretty surprised about. So stay tuned, stay juicy, all that good stuff. Smack the buttons, you know what to do. And I can't wait to hear from you clever robots on the next one.